Prepare to question reality itself. Join us as we unravel the eerie mysteries of Cotard Syndrome, a mind-bending condition where the living believe they're dead. What does it mean to lose your sense of self? Let's dive deep into the bizarre.
All right, so get ready, because today we are going deep into something truly bizarre.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. We're talking about Cotard Syndrome.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's also called walking corpse syndrome.
Walking corpse syndrome.
Yeah, and, well, you'll see why.
I'm ready.
So it's this rare condition where people are convinced that they are dead.
Seriously?
Like, actually dead.
Wow.
Or sometimes they think they're missing body parts.
Yeah.
Or that they don't even exist at all.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
Right. I mean, imagine calling 911 because your family member insists they're a walking corpse, and they even smell like rotting fish.
Oh my gosh, that
There was a case just like that back in 2008.
Really?
Yeah, this woman in the U.S., she was absolutely convinced she was dead.
And people around them, I mean, how do they even react to that?
I can't even imagine. It must be just utterly bewildering.
It must be. So how do we even begin to understand this Cotard syndrome?
Well, think about it this way. Have you ever had that feeling of a dead limb?
Like when your foot falls asleep.
Exactly. You get those pins and needles. It feels all tingly and numb.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, imagine that sensation, but like magnified 1,000 times over.
Okay.
Instead of just a numb foot, someone with Cotard's might actually believe their entire leg is gone.
Even though it's right there.
Even though it's right there. They might feel like their organs are missing, or even that their whole body is just, well, not there.
It's like their brain is completely disconnected from reality.
Exactly. It's a total breakdown in how the brain perceives the self and the world.
So how long have we known about this condition?
Well, Cotard syndrome is actually named after a French neurologist, Jules Cotard.
Okay.
And he first described it way back in 1880.
1880, so that's what, over a century ago?
Over 140 years.
And we still don't know what causes it.
Well, we have some clues. Research suggests there might be links to other mental health conditions.
Like what?
Like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, especially severe depression.
So it's not like a standalone thing. It often shows up alongside other issues.
Right, exactly. But it's not just mental health. We've also seen Cotard's linked to physical factors, too.
Really? Like what kind of physical factors?
Yeah, things like traumatic brain injuries, strokes, tumors, even infection.
Infections. Wow, so it could be a whole range of things.
Yeah, and even severe migraines have been linked to it.
Migraines. That's wild.
Yeah, it is. It is. But here's the thing. How do we go from, these different triggers to someone actually believing they're dead?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? What's the mechanism there?
Well, that's what researchers are still trying to figure out.
Mm.
But there was this study in 2018.
Okay.
And they found some interesting things like neurological issues in people with Cotard's.
Like what kind of neurological issues?
Well, they observed changes in the frontal lobe. They saw decreased blood flow in certain parts of the brain and even lesions.
So hold on. For those of us who aren't brain surgeons, what do those things actually mean?
Sure. So the frontal lobe, that's the part of your brain that handles all sorts of complex functions.
Mm-hmm.
Things like planning, decision-making, and emotional control. And when there are changes in that area, well, it can really disrupt these crucial processes.
And that could lead to the distorted thinking we see in Cotard's.
Exactly. And then lesions, those are areas of damaged brain tissue. And those can be caused by all sorts of things, like the conditions we talked about earlier.
And they can interfere with normal brain function.
Precisely. It's like the brain is sending these mixed signals.
And that scrambles the sense of self.
Yeah, it's a fascinating theory.
It is. But how do you even go about diagnosing something like Cotard's?
Right. It's not like you can just take someone's temperature and say, yep, you've got Cotard.
Exactly.
Well, the truth is it's really challenging. A lot of organizations don't even officially recognize Cotard's as a distinct disease.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's no standard criteria for diagnosing it.
So how do doctors figure it out?
Well, they have to rely on a bunch of different things. Clinical interviews, neurological assessments, and they have to rule out any other possible explanations for the symptoms.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It is. But I think the best way to really understand Cotard's is to hear from the people who've experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about some of those cases.
Okay, well, let's start by going back in time and meeting the very first patient diagnosed with Cotard's.
Oh.
Her name was Mademoiselle X.
Mademoiselle X.
And she was Jules Cotard's patient, the neurologist who first described the syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So this is back in the 19th century. And Mademoiselle X, well, she was convinced that she didn't have a body.
No body at all.
Well, she believed she had no brain, no nerves, no organs, nothing.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
And to make things even stranger, she also believed she was eternally damned and couldn't die.
She thought she was immortal.
Yeah, she called herself a walking corpse.
Oh, wow. So what happened to her?
Well, tragically, this delusion led her to refuse food.
Because she thought she didn't need it.
Yeah, because she was already dead in her mind.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. It really highlights how serious these delusions can be. But let's fast forward to a more recent case. Have you heard of Warren McKinley?
I don't think so.
Well, he was a former Royal Engineer in the British Army.
Okay.
And in 2005, he was in a horrific motorcycle accident.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he suffered a severe brain injury, specifically to his frontal lobe.
Which we know can be linked to Cotard's.
Right. And after the accident, he was admitted to Headley Court, a medical facility for injured soldiers.
So he was surrounded by other people with serious injuries.
Exactly. And it's possible that being in that environment after such a traumatic experience played a role in his developing Cotard's.
Like his brain was trying to make sense of all the pain and suffering around him.
Yeah. And tragically, he started believing that he had actually died in the accident.
So he was experiencing Cotard's.
Full blown. He stopped eating, stopped drinking, refused therapy.
Why did he refuse therapy?
Well, he said, how could they make me better if I'm not alive?
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It really gives you a glimpse into the mindset of someone with this condition. But let's shift gears a little and talk about how Cotard's can affect younger people. Have you heard of Haley Smith?
No, I haven't.
Well, she was just 17 years old when she started feeling like she was dead.
17, that's so young.
I know, and she lived with this feeling for almost 3 years.
3 years, that's incredible.
She said she would have these sudden, overwhelming waves of feeling like she was no longer alive.
I can't even imagine.
One time, she even had to be sent home from school because she was having one of these episodes, and she ended up going to a graveyard.
A graveyard? Why is a graveyard?
Well, she felt a strange sense of comfort being there, like she belonged with the dead.
That's both eerie and kind of sad.
It is. She also found comfort in watching zombie movies. Yeah, she said it made her feel relaxed because it felt like she was with her own kind.
Wow, that's really fascinating. It shows how this condition can really warp someone's worldview.
Absolutely. So we've got this woman in the 19th century, a soldier, a teenage girl. It seems like Cotard's can manifest in so many different ways.
It does. Are there any common threads that run through these cases?
Well, one thing that stands out is this feeling of detachment from the body.
Like they're just observing their lives from a distance?
Exactly. They feel like they're no longer in control, like they're just going through the motions.
It must be a very isolating experience.
It is. But, all of this raises the question of what happens after someone is diagnosed with Cotard's.
Yeah, what kind of treatment options are available?
Well, that's a whole other area we need to explore. And I think it's worth taking the time to dive into those different approaches and what they mean for people like Mademoiselle X, Warren, and Haley.
I agree. Let's do that.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
So when it comes to treatment for Cotard's, there isn't really a one-size-fits-all approach.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, we talked about how it can be linked to so many different things, other mental health conditions, physical injuries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for people whose Cotard's is rooted in, let's say, severe depression or schizophrenia, doctors often prescribe antipsychotic medications and antidepressants, to try to manage those underlying conditions.
So it's about treating the root of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just the Cotard symptoms themselves.
Right, but medication alone, it's usually not enough.
Yeah, I imagine there's got to be more to it than that.
There is, yeah. Psychotherapy is also really important.
Oh, okay.
This could involve things like cognitive behavioral therapy, to help challenge those negative thought patterns or other types of therapy depending on the person's needs.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly. You got to address it from multiple angles.
Yeah. And I'm guessing the success of these treatments really varies from person to person.
It does, yeah.
Depending on the individual and what's causing their Cotard's.
Yeah, I mean, think about Mademoiselle X, the woman we talked about earlier.
The one from the 19th century.
Sadly, she didn't make it.
Yeah, she died from starvation because she refused to eat.
It's a reminder of how far we've come.
It is.
in understanding mental health, but also how far we still have to go.
Absolutely. What about Haley Smith?
Oh, Haley, yeah, she actually recovered.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, she got help from a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And with support from her family and her partner, she was able to overcome the condition.
That's amazing. It really shows the importance of a strong support system.
It does, yeah. Sometimes just having someone who believes you and is there for you can make all the difference.
For sure, for sure. But what about Warren McKinley, the soldier?
Oh, yeah, Warren, his case was really interesting. At Headley Court, he actually met another soldier who had also experienced Cotard's.
Wow, so he found someone who really understood what he was going through.
Exactly.
That must have been, incredibly validating for him.
It was. And that connection, that shared experience, it was really what helped him eventually overcome his delusion.
It's amazing how powerful human connection can be.
It is.
Even when you're dealing with something as bizarre as Cotard's.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we're not alone.
Exactly. And what about Ms. Adele, the woman who called 911?
Oh, yeah, Miss Adele.
Convinced she was dead.
Well, she was treated with antipsychotic medication at a psychiatric unit, and within a month, she showed significant improvement.
Oh, wow. That's really encouraging.
It is.
It seems like even though Cotard's is this really serious condition, there is hope for recovery.
There is.
With the right treatment and support.
Mm-hmm. But we still have so much to learn about it. The causes, the best ways to treat it.
Absolutely. It's clear that Cotard's is this really complex puzzle.
It is, yeah.
But I think what's even more interesting is what it tells us about the human mind in general. What can we learn from this condition about consciousness, about reality?
Well, that's a question that's been debated for centuries.
Yeah.
The relationship between our physical brains and our experiences. And Cotard's really highlights that connection in a very unique way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Explain that a little more.
Well, so you have these individuals, their brains are essentially sending them these distorted signals, right, making them believe they're dead, even though their bodies are clearly functioning.
Right.
It suggests that our sense of self, our consciousness, it's not just a product of our minds, but it's also deeply connected to the physical workings of our brains.
So it's like this breakdown in communication between the mind and body.
Yeah, almost like a glitch in the system.
That creates this warped sense of reality.
Exactly.
And it really makes you question, what we think of as real, what we think of as true.
It's all filtered through our brains.
Yes.
And when those filters malfunction, well, the results can be pretty mind-boggling.
It makes you wonder about, free will and all of that.
Right.
If our brains can trick us into believing we're dead, does that mean we have less control over our thoughts and actions than we think?
That's a really big question that Cotard's forces us to grapple with. It certainly suggests that our conscious experience might be more malleable than we'd like to believe.
It's a little unnerving to think about.
It is, yeah.
But it's also fascinating.
It is, yeah.
The brain is incredibly powerful and complex.
And Cotard's really highlights that.
But it also raises these questions about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
If our sense of self can be so profoundly altered, what does that say about the nature of identity?
That's a really profound question.
It is.
And Cotard's challenges us to rethink our ideas about who we are. It suggests that our sense of self, it's not fixed.
Sure.
It's constantly changing. It's shaped by our experiences, our biology.
It's like we're always rewriting our own stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes those stories take us down some pretty strange paths.
They do, but even those strange paths, they can lead to growth and transformation.
Yeah.
Even with a condition as difficult as Cotard's. There's still potential for healing, for finding meaning.
That's a really important message.
It is. There's always hope.
Yeah, and I think it underscores the need for more research into the human mind, into conditions like Cotard's.
The more we understand, the better we can help people who are struggling.
Exactly. And I think there's also a really important lesson here about empathy.
Oh, absolutely.
These individuals, they're not faking it.
No.
They're experiencing something very real, something that's altering their perception of reality.
And we need to approach them with compassion.
Yes.
With understanding.
Absolutely. So it seems like Cotard syndrome is not just this fascinating neurological phenomenon, but it's also a call for greater empathy.
Yeah.
And for a deeper exploration of what it means to be human.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, well, I think that's a great place to pause.
Okay.
And reflect on what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Cotard's.
We have.
But I think there's one more piece of the puzzle to explore.
Okay.
And that's the broader implications of this syndrome for our understanding of the human mind. Okay. So we've talked about the symptoms, the possible causes, the treatments. We've even heard some pretty incredible stories from people who have lived with Cotard's.
That's a fascinating condition, that's for sure.
It is, it is. But now I want to kind of zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture. What does Cotard's tell us about the human mind in general?
About consciousness, about reality itself.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it's a condition that really challenges our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human.
It does, yeah.
So where do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, for centuries, philosophers and scientists have been debating the relationship between the mind and the body. Are they separate entities or are they two sides of the same coin?
Right, right.
And Cotard's offers some really intriguing insights into this debate.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about it. People with Cotard's, their brains are sending them these incredibly distorted signals, leading them to believe they're dead, even though their bodies are very much alive.
Right.
It suggests that our sense of self, our consciousness, it's not just some abstract mental phenomenon. It's deeply intertwined with the physical workings of our brains.
So it's like a glitch in the matrix almost.
Kind of, yeah. It's like a breakdown in the communication between mind and body.
And that leads to this completely skewed perception of reality.
Exactly. And it really highlights the fact that our experience of the world, everything we perceive as real, it's all ultimately a construct of our brains.
It's kind of a mind-blowing thought, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you question everything you think you know.
It does, it does. It also makes me wonder about things like free will.
Oh, yeah.
If our brains can simply trick us into believing we're dead, does that mean we have less control over our thoughts and actions than we think?
That's a question that Cotard's really forces us to confront.
Yeah.
And it does suggest that our conscious experience might be more malleable, more influenced by our biology than we might like to admit.
It's a bit unnerving to think about.
It can be.
But it also highlights the incredible power of the brain.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to be able to create such a vivid and persistent delusion.
You're remarkable.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying about the mind-body connection, it seems like Cotard's really throws a wrench into our traditional understanding of what it means to be human.
It does. It challenges our definitions of life and death, our understanding of identity.
I mean, if someone truly believes they're dead, but their body is clearly functioning,
right?
Where do we draw the line?
It's a question with no easy answers.
It is. But it's a question that Cotard's forces us to ask.
And I think that's what makes this condition so fascinating. It's not just a neurological disorder.
Yeah.
It's a window into the deepest mysteries of the human mind.
It really makes you realize how much we still don't know.
Exactly. And it highlights the need for more research, more exploration into these uncharted territories of the brain.
Absolutely. The more we understand about conditions like Cotard's, the better equipped we'll be to help people who are suffering.
And to expand our understanding of what it means to be human.
Well said. Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Cotard's syndrome, is there any final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I would just say this. If our sense of self, our perception of reality can be so fundamentally altered, then what does that tell us about the nature of identity, about the nature of existence itself?
That's a big question to ponder.
It is.
But it's one that I think we all need to be asking.
I agree.
Well, on that note, I think we've come to the end of our journey into the world of Cotard syndrome.
A fascinating journey it's been.
It has. It has. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And as always, keep those brains buzzing.